thousands of people lose money in Bitcoin, and yet people tend to really go in on it when it has just done really well. And that's the problem. It's a recipe for disaster. These markets don't just go up and up and up and up and up. And the moment you start taking any market personally, you've lost.
You're very successful at what you do. What I wanted to know is, where is your money then?
Jason Graystone is a best-selling author and investor who reached financial freedom by 30. With nearly 500,000 YouTube followers, he inspires millions to build wealth and live always free.
How do you make that journey? How do you transition? And how can everybody be always free?
But ultimately, it's all come from taking a pound coin and then making that work, and then getting £2 coins and then making that work, till the point where you have every penny working for you.
Do you think Bitcoin could be a strategy to produce a cash flow from?
I think that is a very...
So, Jason, do you think Bitcoin could be a strategy for someone to produce a cash flow from?
I think that is a very unrealistic approach, purely because if you just look at Bitcoin, and what it's done, it's only ever gone up, and yet thousands of people lose money in Bitcoin. And you ask yourself, how is that possible, right? And the reason it's possible is because the people that are trying to make money in it don't really understand it, don't know how it works, and therefore they can't sustainably and consistently generate any income from it, let alone enough to put, a consistent amount to pay the rent every month. So, well, firstly, unless you understand it, believe in it, you shouldn't put your money in it anyway. But even when you do, it's so volatile that you need to be thinking about really long-term time horizons in order to appreciate any consistent monthly withdrawal, because it could be down 50%. You've got to factor for that over a long period of time, and then somehow calculate how much on average you can afford to take out every month. Because if you take too much, then you risk really damaging your account.
And just to clarify, you said it goes up and it's been going up all the way along, but it's not a straight line. It's this wiggle that is the challenge, isn't it?
Anyone who doesn't understand something, like the property market, for instance, that will be a wiggle, go up over a long period of time. But if you get in not knowing what you're doing, and then all of a sudden the housing market tanks and you have no idea why it's tanking, you're probably going to try and sell at a loss, and pull your money out. It's just investing behavior.
The number of people that I speak to that fundamentally don't understand how money works. And I remember speaking to one client, and they had money in an ISA, for example. So every year you're allowed to put £20,000 in an ISA, and your interest is tax-free. And over the years, they had very cleverly stored up their money, and they'd got some 60-odd, 70-odd thousand pounds stored away in an ISA. They then needed to take some money out. That's fine, because you can take it out if you want to, but you'll have lost that amount of allowance. And what they did was they didn't look at the values of the stocks and the shares ISA had been invested in. They took the money out when the market was a low day, and they took the money out. So not only have they then lost the allowance, because you can't go back and claim past year's allowances, they lost money because then the money they pulled out wasn't worth the 70,000. You can't put it back in. And really what you could have done, depending on how much money you need, is you could have taken out a personal loan. You could have taken out some money on a 0% credit card. You could have planned when you were going to take that money out. Or if you got yourself a 0% credit card, and this isn't financial advice, none of this, you could have then just paid that back. If it was over 12 months, you could have made 12 monthly payments to repay it. A high-level investing strategy is what I feel.
You just said, people tend to really go in on it when it has just done really well. And that's the problem, because these markets don't just go up and up and up and up and up. They retrace. The market has a kind of a correction or a settling period. And if you're getting in when it's doing really well, the chances are you're closer to when it's going to take a little bit of a breather, and then it's a recipe for disaster, because then you're like, just as I got in, it went against me, and people take this thing that it's against them, and the moment you start taking any market personally, you've lost.
Yeah. And of course that applies to the property market as well. That'll have its ups and downs. I started investing I started thinking about it in 2007, got into it in 2008, and of course what happened? And what I had managed to do cleverly, in some ways, is in 2007, I could see what was coming from America with these banks starting to crash, the Fannie Mae's and the Freddie Mac's, and I remortgaged 2 flats that we already had. I hadn't invested in them myself. I'd had the help from somebody else and got them. I didn't know what I was doing about them. And we just had these 2 flats. And I just thought to myself, the market's high, the value's good. Now's the time to pull the money out. And I pulled out the money knowing that I wanted to invest in it. So what we then did was took that cash and started investing at the start of 2008. But what I hadn't factored in was quite how bad the crash was going to be. And to the point where I then had a portfolio full of negative properties. I mean, I'd only got about 4 or 5 in those days, but every single property, the mortgage was worth more than the value of the house. And that was squeaky times. But don't panic. That's the trick. And I suppose that'll be the same with Bitcoin. Don't panic. Don't pull it out.
If you speak to anyone who's Bitcoiner, they believe fully in it. You know, they are not panicking. They are just in it, and they're like an army.
Yeah.
And they understand it, and they believe in the future of it and the utility of it and the adoption of it all across the world. And they can sleep at night. And they're not up at night checking a app that is dipped down a couple of £100. And that is what keeps them poised. And if you're not in that position, you're going to have a really hard time in any investment. I mean, property, whatever.
We were talking earlier because I really wanted to be nosy about your money. So you're very successful at what you do. You've got the whole trading side of your life. You've got shares. You've got all these other things. You've got the profile. You've got the YouTube presence. And then, of course, your fingers are in all sorts of other pies, obviously. So what I was doing was being nosy and poking. And what I wanted to know is, where is your money then? Because you've got aspects of, let's call it your bigger business that is generating money. Then that money must go somewhere and must do something. And so it was looking at, if we use the terms, where does your daily, weekly or monthly wage come from? How do you make money on a monthly basis? And my example was, I can work and I do mentoring clients and sourcing clients, but I also have this baseline of my property investment, which is, I'm going to call it hands-free. It's never hands-free and should never be hands-free. I check it, but I check it once a month to make sure that the rent is coming in and that everything is going as it should do according to the system. And then I have events that interrupt the system, like a tenant gives notice that I react to. But most of it, it's just not even an hour a month. And that's my baseline. And then, mainly because I would be bored and I would probably end up divorced from Bob because he couldn't stand living with me 24/7 if I wasn't doing something else. And I think when you've got something you're passionate about, you want to do it, then I help other people. If you like, income model, and then what's your, let's call it your saving model? Where does the stuff that you don't spend go?
Yeah, so it has radically changed over the years. And initially,
Can we start with start?
So initially, I wasn't doing what I enjoyed. And the goal was to replace that active income from an income stream where I just, it was much more passive. I didn't have to work or serve or build any companies or anything like that. And that was very much, it started on just putting money into index funds. Then I went to real estate investment trusts. And then I started picking stocks and doing well on stocks and getting the odd kind of flip return, plus some very low. Well, actually, when I started investing, dividend yields were much better than they are generally across the board.
There's a lot of technical words there. So you started off investing in shares. So pick a share.
Companies,
you just
all stocks, all companies.
Were you picking individual companies?
I was doing that, and I was buying funds.
Yeah. So these are EFTs.
Yep. So the stocks I could consistently make good returns on because, one, I was good at picking them and getting a good return every 6 months. I was able to kind of average out a nice level of income over those 6 months each time. I was pretty confident I could do that. And then I started to look at more swing trading, so more active stuff. But, passive income, I class as like anything less than an hour a month, which which you just said. If it's less than an hour in a month, it's not really active income. So my swing trading portfolio was put together based on me just spending 10 minutes every night, pretty much.
Can I just ask, swing trading, this is where you're buying some, holding them for a while and then selling some.
Yes.
But you're picking individual companies rather than funds now.
Not companies. So I went into the financial markets and traded currencies. Obviously, that requires a lot of skill. So the higher the more active you are in flipping for profit, the more you have to know about the thing. So I spent, 3 years just learning and understanding what I was doing. And then I got to a position where I could consistently generate, weekly income from spending 10 minutes a day trading, which was phenomenal. Then there was about an 18-month period where I was just doing that. So all of my income was just coming from trading. And then what you do is you get pretty bored and, you lose a lot of fulfillment, and you start to question your own. One thinks I'm drug dealing or something because
Yeah.
I'm never working, and people start talking about you, and you think, oh, you know, I need to be up to something. So
Well, you're not seeing anybody. It's
you're not
just you
seeing
and the
it.
machine.
Everyone's at work. Yeah, my wife was out the house because we're under each other's feet. My kids are at school, friends all at work, and it was like I became really good at guitar, but I was putting on a bit of weight and
Bored.
bored. Yeah,
Mm.
so I thought, you know, I'm going to share some information and started doing some YouTube stuff. Now, you know, that has grown to the point where, so the way that I manage it now is I want to put most of my money into what requires my time least.
Yeah.
So you get a lower return, but obviously as the pot grows, you put more into that and you get a better return. So as the opportunities have grown through social media, YouTube, influence, partnerships, people want to give me commissions on their products or, you know, affiliates or things like that. And also I've used my money to buy like shares in angel investment startups who they're out there pushing and building corporations and teams. That's not me. I'd rather just take a smaller piece of a bigger pie and you go and sweat that asset all year.
But that's the ultimate in leverage, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're leveraging your time and you're leveraging your money.
Yeah, but ultimately it's all come from taking a pound coin and then making that work and then getting £2 coins and then making that work.
Yes.
And then getting, you know, until the point where you have every penny working leveraged and working for you so that you can, one, focus on what you like doing, and two, you know, you can almost pick and choose what covers your lifestyle costs. I do that very much. I dynamically adjust my portfolio. So just as lockdown hit, I had my biggest trading day ever. It was about $168,000 in 18 hours. And that was like...
What you made?
Yeah. And it was like, wow, you know, but I had emotions and I didn't know what was going on with the world. It just got into lockdown. And I was like, I'm going to stop, you know, doing that style of trading. I was day trading at the time. And I just thought, you know, I'm going to take some of that money and just put it into lower risk investments and then put some into businesses and a couple of angel investments. So I'm always dynamically adjusting the pot now. So there is no consistent way of where my income's from. It's just...
But that also comes with experience and with the amount of money that you have to work with.
Yeah.
So when you have smaller pots, it's different. What did you do before? I mean, this is called Escape the 9 to 5. What was your 9 to 5 before all of this? How long ago was it and what was it?
Oh, God. I mean, I was an electrical engineer when I left school. So that was I went into electrical engineering. I was an electrician out of school. And then I built an electrical engineering company straight out of school pretty much when I got rejected from the fire brigade. And I
could just see you as a fireman, actually.
Yeah, that was my dream. That was my dream. And yeah, got rejected at interview stage about 4 times. So I decided to go all in on that. But I knew that I didn't want to do that forever. It was kind of just like... So,
but even at that age, you knew that there was an end.
I think when I grew up, you know, we spoke about this on a podcast before, but when I grew up, I really had this lack of security. You know, I was driven to make money, basically. And if you want to go and listen to that other podcast, I think you should.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
It's a great one. But ultimately, I came out of school just driven to become financially independent, I suppose. And when I found out I was going to have my first son, that was just like a rocket up my arse to say I've got to do something. You know, I was panicking because I felt like I'd failed him because I didn't want him to have the life I had.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever would have felt ready. You know, I probably never would have felt like I was in the right position just because of my own psychology around it. But I definitely felt like, oh no, you know, this is not the position I wanted to be in when I had a kid. And I was 23 when we had him. So it just drove me to learn how to invest my money, learn how to build out. You know, I had the experience with the car wash when I was 13 that kind of opened my eyes to how you can delegate and buy assets, which were the kids that were washing the cars, you know, and I was still getting what I wanted, but I was just sacrificing a bit of profit in the short term, wanted in the long term, but doing more of what I enjoyed in that particular role. That just really stuck with me. And when I went out into the world, it was like, right, I don't just want to build a business or create a job. I want to actually create an asset. I want to be free from this. I want to take as much money as I can from this thing and put it into things that are going to free my time and, you know, give me the freedom. So
it's interesting, isn't it? How much of a role, not always our childhood. Sometimes it's in our childhood. Sometimes it's in your teens. Sometimes it's whether you were bullied like us. I mean, my parents stayed together. Your parents didn't stay together, but your marriage has stayed together. My first marriage didn't stay together.
Right.
So you were married when you had your first child. I was a single mum with 2
Right.
kids under 3.
yeah,
And
I
so
wasn't
the
married, but yeah,
oh yeah, but the drivers, but you're still with Sarah, so you know the partnership is still there. But that for me being that single mum with 2 kids under 3, was a big shake-up. And I felt I needed to educate myself, and at the time went into university education. But that came from being told that I was stupid in my marriage.
Right.
So I needed to prove that I was clever. But I also had a backdrop even further back than that of my dad, who was Italian, never understanding the English education system. In Italy, it's quite clear. What do you want to do? You're good at maths, be an accountant, go to accountancy school. And that was it. Your secondary school would be steering you towards accountancy. You're good at the law, you're good at a doctor, you're good with your hands. And the schools took you in the direction that you were going. He didn't understand how I could be going to school with no purpose for coming out of school at the other end.
Right.
I was just going there to learn stuff. And so I was driven in school to do well and failed spectacularly. You know, I was very average at my O-levels. Those would be called GCSEs now. Practically failed my A-levels because my learning style wasn't talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, now answer me the question. Mine was, tell me the concept, let me work it out. Can I ask you a question? This is your answer. Yeah. And that's not what you can do with 30
That's
kids.
still how you learn today, eh?
Yeah.
Exactly the same, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very, because we work together and I'm a nightmare for, I interrupt, ask the question.
It's a nightmare, but that's exactly how you learn, yeah. That's how I learn as well.
Yeah, but that's not how school is.
No.
And so you've got all of this baggage coming forward. So then I went to university. And in those days, because we weren't full of sort of snowflakes and everybody had to be special, we would put on the classroom door, the lecture room door, the results of the exams.
Right.
So we would have a mid-test and then we'd have the exam that you were going to pass your module. And I wanted to have an A, but it wasn't good enough to have an A, which meant over 70%, which I think is quite a low score for an A myself. But there, I needed to be top of the class as well. So one time I scored the best score, but it was a 68. So I got a B, but I was the highest in the class, but it wasn't good enough. And then I'm going back to the lecturer to work out what was it that I missed. And my English was never good. So sometimes it was the grammar and the writing or whatever else. Or, he said that if you couldn't be grammatically correct in your written essay, then you couldn't have an A, even though factually you will. But it's a good point, isn't it?
Yeah.
How can you be an A-star student if your English isn't good enough to write the essay? And I remember when I became a university lecturer, I answered one essay where the kid went, the answer is blah, 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 in it. Actually wrote the words INNIT, couldn't spell the word weather. I love a red pen circling things, but this mindset stuff shapes you.
Yeah.
Having that drive to want to provide, let's call it financial security, was that powerful enough for you that it didn't mean that you had that fear of leaving the corporate world, your business? Because that's what, and I'm going to say it's men. I imagine some high-powered women have it as well. But when you were an electrical engineer and a business owner, you had titles, right? I own a business, I'm an electrical engineer, I go to work 9 to 5, it might not be what I want to do. There is a huge leap to give all of that up, even if the thing that you're giving it up for is the thing that you want. How's that?
There's two things. One was all of those years that I was out, I could be out till midnight and come home. And when I'd come home, Dad's a hero who works hard. You know, I could be out all week and I'd be the hero who works hard. As soon as I started working from home, or just like I had an office, if I went into that office for 10 minutes, I'm choosing to ignore the family.
Yes.
And it's like, I've been out of the house for years, and now I'm in there for 10 minutes and that. So there's a real problem where we had to manage this kind of murky water of how, like, the expectations of how when we could see each other and stuff.
Because and what are you doing when you're in there? I know I'm working.
You have to, all of a sudden you're explaining yourself for spending 10 minutes in an office when I've been out for hours. We did this whole, like, how you spend your time. We put a big whiteboard up in the kitchen and we had all the days of the week, the hours. Everyone picked a coloured pen and, like, wrote down what they would like to do throughout the week. And then we could kind of transparently see where we would have time together and where you could talk and where you could knock on the door, and certainty and clarity to everything. And what you realise actually is no one wants to spend every minute with you anyway. Everyone wants to do their own things. And then it's nice to know when you can spend time. But the other thing was, when we bought the house, it was important that it had an office with its own toilet, like right next to it. And what I used to do is first thing I'd do is get up in the morning, go down to the garage, get a coffee, come back, park my car and walk in the front door, which was like straight into my office and the toilet. So I'd felt like I'd gone to work. Okay. And that was really important. And that helped because because I had one door that came from the kitchen into my office and then one from the front door with a toilet into my office, and it was almost like I treated it like this office building that I
A
just
separate place.
That really helped because it made me feel like I was clocking in and clocking out, and I guess that just comes from an evolutional, like, ingrained in us that we clock in and clock out and exchange time for money, and it just helped with the feeling like I was still doing something
and a shift too, so that when you're in the kitchen you're Jason, husband and father, but when you walk in the office you're putting
that. Yeah, it's serious money making Jason,
right,
still providing for my family Jason, as opposed to, I don't know, just someone who was a bit lost.
Okay.
But again, I did it for 18 months, and that was when I started networking a lot. That's when I met you.
Yeah,
I started networking because I was just.
Oh, is that how we met back in? That was
2018.
Yeah.
So it was a good. I was getting a bit bored at that point.
Right.
And it was just like, what can I do? So.
Okay.
In fact, it was a few years before that. Daniel Priestley was like, "You should come.
Yes.
Come and do this," and I put it off for a few years, and then I just started going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was when I found a bit more of a sense of, that's what I've got to share is
and a tribe too. Then.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people that are thinking the same as you, because as much as you might love your family, if you don't get them in the same cult.
Yeah.
I know when I was,
which is rare. I mean, it's rare anyway.
I did indoctrinate one of my children, and I remember her turning around to me saying, "Don't think you can do all of that," because I'd done some NLP training. "Don't think you can do all that NLP stuff on me. It won't work." And then I remember giving back this very glib line, very NLP-ish. "Well, if that's the belief that you want to hold, then maybe it won't." To the point where, and she was 6 foot tall, and how I didn't get decked at that moment. But she did. She never came on the training. But a couple of years, you can drip in your values to your kids. And
I think with relationships, I see this a lot as well. To me, the good partner is, and the reason you're with them is because they support the side of you that you're crap at, basically. Yes. And you do the same for them. So they're never going to fully appreciate what you do, how you want them to appreciate it. They'll appreciate the support and what you provide and all that, but they'll never pat you on the back for making a good trade or a good investor. It's not really, they don't get that.
No,
of course they don't. That's why they're such a great partner for you. But I see a lot of relationships break down because they feel like, oh, you're not appreciative, you're not supporting me, when really they're them being them. It is the support.
Yeah.
And just the same way you won't truly appreciate something that's really valuable to them as they would, because it's just not as important to you as it is to them.
And that's why the values are so important. Yeah. With all my clients, I've got this values manual that's the first thing that I work with on people. What's important to you? And if we don't make that explicit and put it on the table, then how are we going to know if what you say you want to do is going to work?
Yeah.
So I had a whole period where I was talking to a lot of women that had come to me through a talk. Every one of these women, and a couple hundred of women, I had individual. I offered everybody a free half-hour call, not thinking, A, that there would be many people on the webinar, or that many people on the webinar would want the call. And again, it wasn't long after lockdown, so we were all a bit lonely, and I thought, it'd be quite nice to chat to some other people. Oh my goodness, I had 9 months where there wasn't a minute in my diary that was free. 3 hours a day, every half an hour, switching from one woman to another. But so many of the women, I would go with 80 to 85% of the women, did not have a word in their values list that meant money or financial security or any of that. And yet they wanted to have a conversation with me about, how can I save more, invest more, how can I grow my wealth? And that's not there. Yet with men, that set of words is there. Mm-hmm. And somehow we're brought up with these two different psychologies. And this is why the yin and the yang thing works so well. But then taking that into a corporate world, you're maybe both in executive. We could both equally be executives. Okay, I'm going to play that card, which is, obviously, if we were equal executives, then I would still be earning less. My pension would be less. There would all that stuff going on. But mentally, our values, our view of the world, the way that we solve problems is so different. Understanding that thought process of how I move from where I am now to where I want to get to. Mm-hmm. And that's why I've just wanted to dig into you. I know we started off with a conversation about Bitcoin, and we will come back to that in a minute, because I still think that's important. How do you make that journey? How do you transition? And the more people that I speak to, it's like I almost want to verbally do an autopsy, although you're still alive, thankfully. But, I want to do that verbal dissection and work out, okay, so somewhere in here, there is an answer to the question, how can everybody be as wealthy as they want to be. And wealth isn't about money, it's about the lifestyle. So how can everybody live a wealthy lifestyle? How can everybody be always free, which is your set of words? How can everybody do that? Because if I can do it and you can do it, why can't everybody else do it? So there must be a piece, right? It's a thought or it's an experience. And I know I can find it if I just ask enough questions. I need to go, so what was that moment? Is there something?
I think you touched on it just now. It all comes down to values. To get to a dream life that you have this perception of this dream life that you want to get to, you have to really know what that is in the first place. And I think in order to be free, to be able to be who you want to be and do what you want to do and go where you want to go, that's great. But most people don't know who they are in the first place. They haven't taken the time to understand what's driving them and what they want in life without comparing it to someone else's results or what someone else has done or what their parents wanted them to do. As soon as you detach from all of that and you know who you are and what you want, it makes it so much easier, because then you can align all of the things, all of the money making, all of the wealth building to how it will emphasize what you truly want. And then you'll be more driven to manage your money better, make more money. If I'm making money because I know that it's going to provide me with more time with animals, if I love animals, right? I'm going to be much more driven to do that. Priority there. That's like, right, I didn't want to ask for the sale before, but now it means that I'm going to spend time with my horses or whatever, right? Let's get the money, you know, and you're much more aligned. It feels more effortless. It feels more fluid. And then when you get the money, you manage it better, because you go, right, I know by managing this money is going to get me more of what I want, what I truly want.
And then you'll put the effort into learning how to manage the money, and whether that's into property or Bitcoin.
So the problem is, just on that, is everyone's learning these quick skills to make money on a quick for something they don't even want.
No. And
that's the problem.
And again, the conversations I have with people, so what's your goal? I want £1 million.
Why?
Okay, why? Because I do. All right, so how are you going to make £1 million? Well, I want 100 houses. Why do you want 100 houses? And I remember actually having this conversation with a guy. Why do you want 100 houses? Well, because, it sounds like a good number. Why does it sound like a good number? Because when I see other people who I think are successful, they've got 100 properties. So what sort of houses are you going to have? Buy-to-lets or HMOs, and how many tenants you can have? And then when we looked at it, somewhere in the conversation, he just accidentally slipped out about wanting to be with his family. It wasn't the first thing. What do you want? I want 100. I want £1 million. I want 100 houses. But somewhere in the conversation, he slipped out the word family in there, and I picked on it, and I went, okay, let me do some maths with you. You're going to have this many houses and that many tenants, and it's going to give you that much cash flow, which isn't £1 million. And you're going to have to work like this, like this, like this, and therefore you're not going to see your kids. And you're going to do all that while still having a job, because you need to stay employed, because we need to be able to prove that you can afford the mortgage. So you've got to be working a full-time job and doing full-time property. You're going to see your kids for less. And then turned it the other way around and went, what if you just had this? He sort of saw the light, because the idea of having £1 million, the numbers, £1 million, 100 houses, this, that, and the pictures that we see on social media, standing in the fancy car. You know, I've got a crappy car because I will buy a car based on colour.
No car.
Oh, yeah.
My wife drives a Tesla.
Yeah, but I would only buy a car if I liked the colour of the car. I'm not driven by those things.
No.
And therefore, what I am driven about is memories. And I talked about that in flash the book as I've got it here, The Wealthy Retirement Plan.
That's a much slimmer version than the version I've got.
Oh, really? Oh, I'll leave this one with you. That was because we did the edit.
Right.
It was twice this size.
Yeah, I've got 2 of those.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
And then the editor went, right, we can cut that bit, we can cut that bit. So much easier read, that one. But in there I talk about what drives you. And I wonder whether in education we could have thought of this. Instead of what do you want to do, which leads everybody to be working in the city, they then want to escape because it's not fulfilling them.
Yep.
How do you want to be? And I think the being comes from, what memories do you want to create? Which is, how do you spend your time? What mission are you on? Save horses, teach people guitars, teach people how to trade, teach people how to be wealthy, whatever it is. What's your mission? There's a multi-general, because I wanted to keep with the M's. So this is sort of like family, community, being with your elders, being with your youngers, being with the family outside, or generally with community. And those 3, your mission, your memories, and the multi-generationalness of your life, needs supporting by something, which is means, which is work, but I needed to keep the M in. So, which is the means. By what means are you going to generate enough money to allow you to have the memories you want, the time with the family, and the time to do the passion that you want. Now, can you imagine if we asked all kids those questions? When they're little, they're going to want to be train drivers or whatever they're going to want to be. They won't really know that. As they get older, the more that you ask those questions, we would be shaping their minds to realise that it isn't just about the fancy car or the watch or the whatever or the size of your house or anything else. It's about your time, because the time is the only thing that we can't replace.
Yeah, it's living and being forever, being in that state where you can just enjoy your time for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to teach kids that because...
Well, they've got so much of it ahead of them.
Yeah, I know. But we take, humans just take things for granted as well. The more we have of stuff, the more we just devalue it, I guess. And you tell a kid not to touch a hot plate, they won't believe you until they actually touch it. And some things they just have to learn.
Yeah. I had a child that touched it 3 times before they learned.
Right.
So, keep going. Is it still hot? Yeah, it's still hot. Does it still burn? Yes, it does.
Pushing boundaries.
Yeah, all the time. So let's come back to that Bitcoin thing. So the way I started this was that question about, could we use Bitcoin as a way to generate a monthly income or a wage or whatever, an income to support us for the life we want, which we know we've got to work on? If not property, if not Bitcoin, then property. You've got trading. That requires learning and a slow road. I did property. That required learning and a slow road. Oh, there's a message here. If you were going to start out all over again, knowing all the things that you know, yeah, that's sort of like fried your brains, and you're about to step out, or maybe just before you step out of your electrical engineering business, what would you do first?
I have no goals. I don't really have any goals. I'm on a mission, as you say, and my mission is to spread important information about being free, living your full potential. And I think when you're in that state, you become a better human being anyway, and you can solve better problems. And
because I was going to ask you why do you want everybody to be free?
Because I know how I feel, and I know there's an energy shift, and I know that you see more opportunities, you become a better parent, better partner, better spouse. You can be a voice of reason. You can see logically,
because you're not bogged down with the mundane.
Yeah, you're not a slave to other people's thoughts. You're not a slave of your time to other people's dreams, and you're fully present. I guess I'd take a long time to respond to a question, but what I'm doing is every question that I answer for them, I'm imagining if I died immediately after I answered that question, would I be happy with the answer?
Yeah.
In other words, is the answer timeless? Like, would I scribe it onto a stone and bury it, and people can find it thousands of years later?
Right.
And I think when you're in a position like that, you can truly give your love and care to an answer. And I know that sounds simple, but when you can communicate to people that way, there seems to be people thrive off of it. People come alive. You see them come alive and see them realize that actually they feel inspired because they know that that's in them already. It's just a great position to be in. So I think it's important. I think you judge less, you love more. You're not living in circumstance, you're not polarized, and so it's just a much more.
Well, you're grounded in the middle, aren't you? Because you're coming from you.
Exactly.
Your values, what's important to you.
Yeah. And whatever you do decide to create, whether that's just an answer to a question or a product or a service, or you want to help someone, it comes from an outcome focus. You can truly want someone to succeed because you're not focused on earning the money, you're focused on actually helping someone. And as a byproduct of that, you actually earn more money than you could ever, because of that energy that's gone into that service. So going back to your question, I would go straight into sharing my message. It would just be digital content.
So not starting with the shares. You'd get your digital out there sooner. I mean, because obviously we're presupposing that when I did this, I changed the timeline, that you had all the knowledge you had now and took it back. So that's how you could go straight into your content, because you had the insights.
Yeah, I mean, I would still invest my money. Whatever I earn will buy assets that allow to pay me regardless of me. So every penny I earn, I would put into something that would pay for my living costs, regardless of if I had an accident or if buy those types of income producing assets. And I think everyone should do that, because that's the financial freedom element of Always Free. The mental freedom is knowing who you are. Mobility freedom is building a vocation around who you are and earning money so it doesn't feel like a job. And then the financial element is basically how much time you can buy into the future if you needed to stop. And if you have all those three things, you'll be in that position of feeling very, very free.
Yeah, I think I would still invest in property because I needed more people than the computer screen. Because when I was at university, there was a point where, before I did my master's in education, I was going to do a master in computer programming. And I quite liked it. And I created code to do that ping pong game. And,
Right.
so I could do the code. But it was very lonely. Very, very, very lonely. And there were times in property that were lonely. I mean, not only because I was doing it and nobody else understood what the heck I was on about. The friendship groups I had, I remember going out for dinner with people who were friends, and I would, oh, so how are you? How are you? How are you? And we would ask and we would answer, and then the conversations would move on. And it just felt like, and I started to then almost detach and observe. They asked one another questions about the things that they said they were doing. Nobody ever asked me about what I was doing. And when I wrote my very first book, Using Other People's Money, which was way back in 2010, none of my friends were pleased for me or excited for me or, oh, what's the book about? Or how can we buy the book? There was none of that. And then I remember going the next 2 times and I didn't join in the conversation and I just listened to the conversation, because instead of trying to input my piece and be part of it, I was just thinking about, well, what is it that they're talking about? And we had become so far apart that I'd gone on this path. I'd done my personal development training. I'd come across property, and I always thought mathematically that there was something about property. There was a moment in my childhood where my grandparents' house was on a reasonably large plot of land, and we were looking at whether we could build properties. And what I didn't have then was the language to ask the questions or the age. I was before I was 18, and I just didn't. And we didn't have the internet. I'm so old that there was a time in my life when there wasn't an internet. And so I didn't have anyone to go to ask the questions. I didn't have the language to ask the question, to find the person. And so I was just stuck. But I had this seed that knew that there was something about property, that you could take land, you could build on it, you could take houses, you could chop them up, you could take houses, you could improve them. And then when I finally got some of the language, that you could go to a bank, and instead of having to put in 100% of my money, I could put in just 25% of my money, or when I first started, even 15% of my money, and the bank would lend me the rest. And then if I could make the maths work, and I could feel myself getting excited about that, but sitting there and looking at a screen, I could get excited by it, but I think that I might be even more lonely than I am at times now. There were times when for years, when I went and viewed properties, and I would go into the estate agents, and the 2 estate agents were my friends, and I met up with her again just recently. So here we are 16 years after I first met her, and she's gone from being just the girl in the office to she's now gone round the estate agent and come back, and she's now manager in that same branch.
Right.
And it was amazing to see her, because, we're all grown up, and I would have gone in the old days, and they were all repossessed properties, and they didn't bother to come out with me on the viewings. We'd have a chat. I'd walk around, look at the pictures. What about this one? What about that one? And then they'd give me this envelope full of keys, and off I'd go, let myself in and out the houses. And I was all on my own all day. Whereas now when I go up, Bob and I make a holiday out of it. Each one is like a little mini holiday. We go up for a couple of days. We stay at a nice hotel, whereas I was staying in this, I won't say it was slummy. It was all right, but it was round the back of a petrol station hotel, and the rooms were like 40 quid, and I knew the room number. I always asked for the same room number because it was like my little home from home. And my office was McDonald's because there was a toilet, free Wi-Fi, and a cup of coffee. And I don't have to do it that way anymore. And it's not as lonely now because Bob will come with me, because then he can check out the electrics, because he's an electrician too. And it sort of changes, but you put in that slog. I would still do property. But now what I'm looking to do is take the money that is the profit in the company and put that into ISAs and shares and things like that, because now I'm leveraging my leverage. I've leveraged my first piece of money.
That's it.
Now I've got the profit. I can leverage the profit, which I suppose is what you've said with putting your bits everywhere.
Yeah, the goal is to, I've got multi-tiers to the portfolio, but the goal is to have it all in the bottom tier, which is the most passive and the most, least
and you just
leveraged.
push it down, push it down, push it down.
But you need to grow the pot to do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
because you still got to have your working capitals.
Yeah, of course.
So if we started with a question, would Bitcoin, or even potentially shares, but we'll save that one for another episode, but would Bitcoin give you that monthly income? I think listening to what you've said, that it's very much about education. You need to learn and understand how money works first, and then what the investment vehicle you're going to use works and how it works, because otherwise, if you don't, you might know how money works, but you're going to lose it because you're going to stick it into something that there's a hole in, whether you made the hole or not. And then thinking about cash flow, because if you don't have some way of generating a wage, you're never going to be able to replace your wage to step out. In your case, you had a business, which I guess you could sell, and that gave you your lump.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, if you're in a job, then you've got a wage that you've got to replace.
Yeah.
And then mindset, I would go with. So I like to sort of leave everybody with a bit of extra whoosh at the end of a podcast to say to them, thank you very much for listening. So that was what I would say. Mindset, how money works, how your investment works. And the big thing out of that is the thing that I suppose leads us to what Jason was saying, which was, if you know you and what's important to you, your values, the essence of you, then you don't have to listen to all this stuff. You pick who you learn from and you create whatever is your version, because different people's versions are different. You're always free. Mine is a wealthy life. They're variations on the same thing. But I love tomatoes and you don't have a greenhouse. So how it looks when it comes out the other end will be different.
Yeah. I mean, even with the Bitcoin statement, that is all based on my education, my knowledge of Bitcoin. There might be someone out there who knows how to do that. That's the important thing. You stick to what you know.
And I triggered this question because the one time I did go into Bitcoin, I went into Bitcoin where I thought I was being clever and safe, and what would happen with the Bitcoin is it would be lent out and I would get a guaranteed return, which for me was going to give me the cash flow, and I put the money into the guaranteed returns, and then they took it and they closed the business and they vanished.
Right.
And off went $5,000. Gone.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. And the mindset piece is the most important, because like, if you cannot manage your money or income, you're not going to do that in any endeavor. I met traders who are broke. I've met, they make a load of money on a Wednesday and go and blow it by Friday.
Yes.
And now they've got to go and make it again. So making money and managing money, two totally different studies. And you have to get your mindset around that.
Yeah.
As you
And
spend £1 million.
Yes.
Unless you're thinking, well, what return can I get from that £1 million in terms of,
and then live off the egg.
live off that. Unless you're asking that question, you probably just value spending the money.
Yeah.
You want £1 million to spend it.
Yeah.
Which is also good if it's going to get you things that you truly want.
But that's only going to last so long.
Yeah, exactly.
I listened to the radio coming in. They're doing a competition on the radio where they're going to get £250,000 a week as a, competition prize. I mean, apart from the fact how many tickets you're going to have to buy to do it. So this is just a variation on the lottery. And the radio host said, wow, that would pay for an amazing wedding. £250,000 on a giant party that you're going to invite a load of people who don't care about you to celebrate the wedding of you and someone that you don't know that they're going to stay with you.
Yeah. I look at that $250,000 like how many months it can buy me.
I know how many months money I've got in the bank. But I mean, that amount of money, you could have a wodge that you put over here for your fun money. And then the rest you can put in 2 or 3 different ways that you're going to invest it. Some low risk, some high risk, and some medium risk, or some short term, some long term, some passive, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I've had radically high lifestyle costs at times in my life. Slowly brought that back down. You can get over it and you realise actually we figure out what's important to you. It doesn't actually cost that much.
That's a good way to end. Brilliant. Thank you, Jason.
Great.